You never truly believed the world around you was stable. Deep down, there has always been a flicker, a suspicion whispering from the corners of your mind, a hairline fracture in the glass of reality that others refuse to see. They told you life was order, rules, purpose. They told you to obey, to fit neatly inside the frame that someone else carved centuries before you were born. Yet every time you smiled when expected, every time you lowered your gaze when commanded, there was a presence behind your eyes reminding you that this wasn't obedience. It was surrender, and surrender has always tasted like poison. You were promised safety, but only in exchange for silence. They gave you identities like chained student, worker, citizen, believer. Masks disguised as roles, boundaries disguised as protection. They convinced you that to step outside these fragile lines was madness, but the truth is simpler and far darker. The madness was in staying inside them. The streets you walk, the institutions you trust, the myths you recite, all were built on the bones of those who asked the wrong question. And still you have felt it, that pulse under your skin, the knowledge that the world is less sanctuary, more stage. You are the actor, the script is not yours, and the applause has always been hollow. But tonight the mask slips. The curtain you never noticed begins to tremble. For the first time you see the gears behind the illusion, the hidden machinery that kept you docile. The ladder you thought belonged to a villain has always belonged to your rulers, the architects of your cage. Their control was never strength, it was theater, fragile and absurd, waiting for someone like you to notice. Now you stand at the threshold, one step away from seeing not the world as they painted it, but the world as it truly is, unstable, ungoverned, raw. The invitation is not spoken in words, but in the silence that follows realization. You feel it in your chest, a tightening, as if the walls around you are holding their breath, waiting for your decision. Step forward, and you abandon the lies that once gave you comfort. Stay still, and you will rot in the prison you once mistook for home. There is no neutral ground. There never was. The choice has been stalking you for years, disguised as your insomnia, your unease, your refusal to be pacified by cheap promises and hollow comforts. You are not insane for sensing it. You are not broken for doubting them. The insanity was pretending the lie could last forever. What you feel now is not chaos, it is clarity. The beginning of something forbidden, dangerous, inevitable. The faint smile curling at the edge of your thoughts is not madness, it is recognition. For the first time, you are no longer the one asleep, and for the first time, they should be afraid. You were handed a mirror long ago, but it was never meant to show you yourself. It was polished by strangers, framed with their laws, angled to reflect their expectations. Every time you looked into it, you thought you saw your own reflection staring back, but now you see the cracks. Thin, jagged lines spiderwebbing across the surface, each fracture whispering a truth you weren't meant to hear. The reflection has never been yours. It was theirs. A mask, painted and imposed, crafted so well that you forgot to ask who you really were beneath it. You remember the voice of authority telling you what is good, what is evil, what is safe, what is dangerous. You obeyed, not because you believed, but because the mirror showed you no alternative. Every choice you made was not yours, but a script written in invisible ink long before you were born. The system smiled at your obedience, rewarded your silence, and convinced you that loyalty was freedom. Yet deep down, in the private corridors of your mind, you felt the weight of something wrong. That unease was not weakness. It was the last fragment of truth trying to claw its way back into your grasp. They called the mirror sanity, but sanity was their weapon, a cage disguised as clarity. You were told to be reasonable, to follow order, to trust the rules etched into stone. But whose stone was it? Whose chisel carved the commandments that govern your life? Not yours. Not the people's. It was carved by hands that smiled in shadows, laughing as they chained you with rituals of work, loyalty, and unquestioned faith. And when someone dared to resist, dared to call out the madness, the mirror shattered in their hands, and the world called them insane. You've been warned to fear those cracks in your reflection, to glue them shut, to hide them. But cracks are not weakness. They are proof that the mask is breaking. When the surface splinters, light seeps through, and that light blinds those who built the illusion. They hate it because they know once you see clearly, you can never unsee. You begin to realize that the roles were reversed all along. They were the mad ones, drunk on control, while you, the obedient one, were merely drugged into submission. Now the fractured mirror demands a choice. You can keep polishing the false reflection, pretending the cracks don't exist, and live forever as their puppet. Or you can lean closer, press your hand against the shattered glass, and feel the cut of truth against your skin. Painful, yes, but it is the pain of awakening, the sting of blood reminding you that you are alive, and that your face was never theirs to define. The mask is falling away, piece by piece. The cracks spread wider, and as they do, the stranger in the reflection fades, and something far more dangerous emerges you. Chaos does not arrive with thunder. It breathes quietly like a shadow at the edge of your vision, reminding you that the order you worship was never real. You were taught to fear disorder, to cling to rules like a drowning man clings to driftwood. But look closer, the rules you serve are the lies that keep you blind. They call it peace, yet every smile is painted over rot. Every law is a weapon disguised as protection. You obeyed because you were told to. You believed because believing was easier than seeing. But the cracks are spreading. The silence you once trusted now trembles with laughter. Chaos does not destroy, it unmasks. It strips away the illusions, revealing the raw machinery that turns behind the curtain. You begin to see how fragile their power really is, how brittle their monuments are when touched by fire. They convinced you that chaos was an enemy, a demon to be exorcised. But what if it is the only thing that tells you the truth? What if the demon they warned you about was simply the voice they couldn't silence? Their order is nothing but fear dressed in uniforms, fear sealed in contracts, fear disguised as morality. And once you taste the air outside their cage, the fear starts to dissolve. There is a rhythm to chaos, an elegance they never wanted you to notice. It moves like a dance, reckless yet precise, untamed yet inevitable. You feel it in the pulse of the city at night, neon lights flickering against broken alleys, laughter echoing through deserted streets, the kind of laughter that carries no joy, but all the freedom of madness unchained. This is not destruction, this is liberation. The world they built for you is nothing but glass, and chaos is the stone that proves it can shatter. When the shards fall, they cut, they wound, but they also reflect light in ways the unbroken mirror never could. And in that light, you finally see yourself, not as the obedient servant they trained you to be, but as something untouchable. Chaos does not beg for permission, it does not wait for approval. It simply exists unapologetic and alive. And for the first time, you feel the weight of your chains loosen, not because they were unlocked, but because you realized they were never real. You wore them out of habit, out of fear, out of loyalty to a world that never deserved you. But in the arms of chaos, you are weightless, you are dangerous, you are awake. They told you order would save you, but it is chaos that sets you free. And once you have danced with it, once you have felt its rhythm move through your veins, you can never return to silence. Because silence is death, and chaos. Chaos is the first breath of life you were meant to breathe all along. They told you the monsters were locked away in shadows, crawling under your bed, hiding in alleys. But you see it now. The real monsters wear suits, polish their smiles, and sit beneath golden lights that blind you into obedience. They hide not in darkness, but in the highest towers, feeding on your trust while you thank them for the poison. Every law they pass, every word they preach, every promise whispered into your veins was never meant to protect you. It was designed to chain you, to keep you docile, to keep you dreaming while they drain you dry. You look back and realize the monsters you were warned about were only distractions. The wolves were already inside the walls, laughing as they painted themselves as shepherds. You've always felt it, haven't you? That strange pulse beneath the surface. The sense that something was off, that the world around you was a stage crafted for your silence. You saw their eyes on the screen, confident, untouchable, telling you who to fear, who to hate, who to obey. But behind those eyes was hunger, not human hunger, but the insatiable appetite of predators who thrive on control. They feed on your hesitation. They consume your faith, and every time you bow your head and say nothing, they grow stronger. You thought monsters roared. No. The worst monsters smile and ask for your applause. They mastered the art of masks. Ancient empires carved them into marble. Modern rulers carve them into policies and screens. And you, like billions before you, were meant to play your role in their theater, a silent witness applauding the very hands that bind you. They don't need to drag you into cages. They built invisible walls inside your mind, convincing you that rebellion is madness, that questioning is crime, that obedience is virtue. And while you swallowed their commandments, they laughed, because what greater trick could there be than convincing the prey that the predator was its savior? Now the mask cracks. You see the grin beneath their sermons, the rot beneath their rituals of power. They hold the crown not because they earned it, but because they kept you blind long enough to forget you ever had teeth. You were told to fear chaos, but chaos was never your enemy. It was their shield, their story, their justification to keep you weak. They declared themselves heroes in the same breath they signed your silence. They called themselves protectors while burying their claws deeper into your throat. And in this moment, you finally understand the monsters in power were never hiding from you. They were hiding you from yourself. Because once you see them for what they are, the balance shifts. Once the curtain falls, they tremble. You are not staring into the abyss anymore. The abyss is staring back, and for the first time, it's afraid of you. You always thought silence was harmless. You told yourself that staying quiet was safer, that it spared you from confrontation, that it was the mark of wisdom rather than fear. Yet in the silence, monsters grew fat. In the silence, tyrants sharpened their teeth. Every time you bit your tongue, every time you turned your eyes away, you weren't choosing peace, you were feeding them. And they knew it, they counted on it. They built empires on your silence, brick by brick, lie by lie, until the very walls that surround you now are made of your own obedience. You heard the screams, though, not with your ears, but in the restless way your heart pounded when injustice passed before you. You felt the unease, the gnawing in your stomach when the powerful laughed at the powerless. You knew, deep down, that something was wrong, that the script you were told to follow was written in blood. And still you stayed quiet, because silence was easier, because speaking meant sacrifice, because the sheep who strays from the herd is devoured first. That's what they taught you. That's the trap they built. Obedience disguised as survival. But survival is not living. Survival is a cage, a trembling existence in exchange for comfort, for illusion, for crumbs. And you see it now, don't you? The silence never protected you. It betrayed you. It made you complicit in the very nightmare you feared. You became the shadow that stood by, the witness who said nothing, the soul who traded fire for safety. While you whispered to yourself that you were powerless, your silence was the power they wielded against you. Look at the world they crafted from streets patrolled by hollow promises, smiles stretched over rot, leaders crowned not by honor but by the cowardice of those too afraid to speak. They stand unchallenged, not because they are strong, but because you believed you were weak. The truth is harder to face. It wasn't their strength that bound you. It was your silence that built their throne. And now the weight of it presses on you. Every unspoken word, every swallowed scream, every knot of compliance echoes in your bones like chains. You feel it, don't you? The guilt, the anger, the quiet realization that you could have been more, that you should have been more. This is the silence of the sheep, a silence that grows heavy enough to crush the soul, yet never loud enough to stop the slaughter. But beneath that crushing weight, something stirs. The silence you once thought was safety begins to fracture. You hear it cracking like glass in your chest. And in that fracture is a choice: remain the sheep and continue feeding the monsters, or step into the darkness you have always feared and become something that no silence can contain. The truth is brutal, but it is simple. You were never powerless. You were only quiet. And now the silence ends. You stand before the fracture, and there is no middle ground left. The life you've carried until now, obedient, tamed, restrained, was never yours to begin with. It was crafted for you, woven by hands that never wanted you to see beyond the veil. And yet here you are, staring into the abyss they warned you about. Not because you stumbled into it, but because something within you has always known. There comes a point when pretending is more unbearable than the fall itself. You are being forced into a choice, not by me, not by fate, but by the truth that refuses to stay hidden. Do you retreat into the familiar silence, the silence that suffocates your voice while telling you it's safety, the silence where the monsters thrive because they know you will not resist. Or do you step into the forbidden, where nothing is promised except the burning away of everything false? The choice is brutal. One path keeps you asleep, shackled, applauded for being harmless. The other sets fire to every illusion, strips you bare, and leaves you standing in front of yourself with no excuses left to cling to. You are told that freedom is peace, that freedom is comfort, that freedom is permission. Lies. True freedom is violent, unmerciful, a storm that crushes the version of you that bows its head in fear. True freedom demands sacrifice. It requires the death of the weak reflection you've been feeding all your life. You cannot carry your old skin into what waits on the other side. Like a serpent, you must tear it off, piece by trembling piece, until the raw, unrecognizable self emerges from beneath. This is the threshold, the place where the obedient die and the dangerous are born. There is nothing polite about transformation. It is not clean. It is not tender. It feels like betrayal because it is betrayal against the false masters who wrote your script, against the timid voice that begged you to stay small, against the ghost of who you thought you were. But beneath the betrayal is a revelation you were never weak, only taught to believe you were. Every restraint placed on you was proof of what they feared, not what you lacked. And when you see that, you understand why they kept the choice forbidden. The cosmos itself seems to hesitate here, as if holding its breath. Time folds inward, and for a fleeting moment, you feel everything. Every suppressed scream, every unspoken thought, every violent dream that rattled the cages of your mind. They all rush back, demanding acknowledgement, demanding release. You can still turn back, pretend you didn't hear their call. But if you step forward, you step into a covenant older than history, the pact of fire. To burn away the husk, to bleed in exchange for clarity, to lose everything false so that what remains cannot be broken. And here is the secret they buried in shadows. The abyss is not punishment, it is initiation, and the monsters do not fear the fall itself, they fear the one who climbs out of it, laughing, unscarred, and no longer willing to kneel. You have been taught to fear your own reflection, not the face in the mirror, but the darker presence behind your eyes, the one that whispers when the world goes silent. They told you to bury it, to smother the voice that urged you to resist, to question, to strike back when you were trampled. They called it dangerous, unstable, unfit for polite society. And so you obeyed. You built cages out of smiles, wrapped chains around your instincts, forced yourself to kneel in rooms where you should have been standing tall. You convinced yourself that suppression was safety, that silence was survival. But deep down, you always knew it was a lie. That buried voice was not weakness. It was power waiting for recognition. Every time you bit your tongue instead of speaking truth, it grew sharper. Every time you swallowed your rage, it learned patience. Every time you obeyed when you wanted to defy, the shadow sharpened its claws in silence. And now it waits, not as an enemy, but as the other half of you, the half that remembers betrayal, the half that refuses to be fooled again. You are not haunted by it. You are haunted without it. You were raised to think light is purity and darkness is corruption. But ancient empires knew the truth light blinds, darkness reveals. Only in the dark do you see the stars. Only in the dark do you recognize what hunts you, what follows you, what conspires in silence. To reject the shadow is to walk blind among predators, bleeding unaware. To embrace it is to see with night vision, to step into a clarity that terrifies the powerful, because they know you will never close your eyes again. Your shadow is not madness. It is strategy. It is the collection of every lesson written in pain, every humiliation burned into memory, every betrayal carved into bone. The polite world told you to forget, to forgive, to move on, to pretend the knife was never there. But your shadow kept the receipts. It cataloged every strike against you, not to drown you in bitterness, but to ensure you never walk unarmed again. The shadow remembers so you can adapt. It carries the venom so your blood stays clean. And here is the revelation that unsettles even the monsters who watch you. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your shield. It is the wolf that walks beside you in silence, baring its teeth only when you command. It is the unspoken warning in your eyes, the aura that makes liars stutter and predators hesitate. They sense it, even if you never name it. That is why they tried to convince you to fear it, because if you claim it, you become untouchable. Now the silence is over. The chains have rusted. The shadow rises, not to consume you, but to complete you. And for the first time, you realize the truth: you were never weak. You were only unfinished. They told you that you were dangerous because it was easier than admitting they were afraid. They dressed their fear in uniforms, in rituals, in titles and laws, whispering among themselves that if you were ever to awaken, their walls would crumble. So they painted you as the monster, a mask for their trembling hands, a story to keep their own shadows hidden. But the truth is heavier, sharper, older. You are not the monster. You are what keeps the monsters awake. Because when you close your eyes, you hear what they silence. You sense the cracks in their polished illusions, the rotting beneath their crowns. And in the dead of night, when their voices are gone, when their towers groan under the weight of their lies, it is your silence that haunts them. They cannot sleep because they know silence does not mean surrender. It means waiting. It means calculating. It means remembering every chain, every betrayal, every moment they tried to convince you that your strength was sickness. They think power lies in their symbols, in their armies, in the laws they carved like tombstones. But your power is more ancient. It does not beg for permission. It does not need applause. It coils in the marrow, patient as a serpent, striking only when the pulse of fear betrays the tyrant. They know this. They know that one gaze from you, unbroken, strips away their false crowns, and that knowledge stalks them through every corridor of their empire. You were never powerless. You were contained, hidden under labels, under diagnosis, under chains disguised as guidance. But containment cracks, and when it does, when the seal ruptures, they hear footsteps in places that should be empty. They hear whispers beneath their prayers. They hear your laughter in the echo of their locked chamber. And they wonder if tonight will be the night their illusion ends. The monsters of this world do not fear the chaos they claim to fight. They fear the order you carry inside, the discipline of one who has walked through fire and did not collapse. They fear the clarity of your gaze, the precision of your rage, the silence of your endurance. Because monsters thrive on chaos, but you have learned to wield it, to sharpen it into a blade, to turn their own darkness back upon them. And so when they sit at their tables, when they raise their glasses and toast their control, it is not victory that fills their lungs. It is the taste of ash. Because they remember you, they remember the one they could not break, the one whose silence bends time, whose presence reshapes every room. And they whisper, though they dare not speak aloud, if you ever stand fully awake, they are finished. You are not their nightmare. You are the reason nightmares exist at all.